Okay, hi, I'm Giles Walker, and this is my studio.
Giles, thanks for inviting me down to the studio. We're here to talk about your show Monster, which is coming up soon. Can
Yeah,
you tell me about Monster first of all, what it's all about?
yeah, it's basically going to be an installation of animatronic figures and bits of furniture involving sort of light, sound, dialogue, and it'll be something you can walk in and around. Probably it's going to fill the warehouse, I think, and yeah, it's full size figures talking to you, talking amongst themselves, and it's based loosely on the idea of sort of this sort of brooding sense of sort of purposeless or meaningless that I think a lot of people in society are feeling at the moment.
It's quite a big exhibition for you, this one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely the biggest I've done yet, and whereas the Last Supper was big, but it was kind of focused around a big table. It was more condensed. This is going to slightly more spread out, so you can, rather walking around it, you can walk in and amongst it.
And the Last Supper was that was your previous exhibition.
Yeah, that's a show that was just recently showed in the London Science Museum. Yeah, and that was probably my most recent show. Yeah.
So how did you, get involved in this sort of style of sculpture in the first place?
Well, I was a member of the Mutoid Waste Company for some. Been a member since the late '80s, and for those who don't know about Mutual Waste Company, we basically built sculptures from scrap, and what happened was I started building stuff from scrap, sculptures, static sculptures from scrap, and then I discovered things like windscreen wiper motors and electric window motors, and so I started incorporating them into the sculptures, just making them have simple movements, and then I don't know. Two things happened, I guess. Well, three things happened. One is that cars became more and more robotic in the sense that there was more and more kind of material around in material coming from them that you could build sort of these kind of robotic type sculptures from. Plus, the internet kind of started, so there's all this information available to me on how to control it. And I can't remember what the third one is. But oh yeah, and what happened with me was I was just putting more and more. I kept on putting more and more motors into these sculptures, giving them more and more movement. And I didn't know how to control them. So I was just like, I used to rig up these doorbells and just like sort of play them like a piano, kind of like. And then when they invented the internet, or when I discovered the internet, I realised that there were these little chips that you could just program, and then they would control the movement for you, and you could then get it a lot more fluid, a lot more let's say a lot more poetic, and so yeah, and through them over 25 years or whatever it's been, maybe 30. You get more and more involved. But
You had to learn this all on the go then,
yeah,
as the technologies were emerging.
exactly, yeah, and it's still changing now. But to be honest, I'm not particularly interested in the technological side of things. Really, for me, it's a means to an end. If I think, I want to build a character who does that or behaves in a certain way, then I'll learn how to do that. By going on trial and error, going online. I blow up quite a lot of motors just by not knowing what I'm
There's
doing.
a lot of trial and error going on.
Well, it gets expensive, so you have to you have to be a bit careful. But yeah,
Do you remember the first thing you ever built? The sort of
that moved.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I well, this was back in early '90s. I built this band called Antibody, and every musician in the band was a robot. But I had absolutely no money to do it on, and so yeah, these drummers were just drumming on old lawnmower motors, and absolutely lethal blades going around. And yeah, so Antibody was probably the first sort of set of robots I built.
What sort of year was that? What's that?
I think that was 93 or something like that. Yeah, and then after lugging all that gear around to gigs and stuff, which got really, you needed a big truck, and it was all heavy and clumsy stuff. I decided to strip it all down, and I built one robot called Ruby Throat, and he was a lead vocalist to this band that I was in, and actually Ian Jury did the vocals for him in the end. So we got to play with the blockheads quite a lot, and yeah, and it just went on from there. And that even those robots, that Ruby Throat was radio controlled, and then it's now I've got narrowed it down, so yeah, I run it all on DMX. It's much more sophisticated, and than it was in those days.
Which are streamlined.
Yeah, and more reliable, that's for sure, yeah.
And you mentioned the Mutoid Waste Company before. Can you tell me something more about those? Was that a collective of artists you were part of?
Yeah, Mutoid Waste Company was started by Joe Rush in, I think, the early 80s. And it sort of grew. By the time I joined, there was 15 people. And we kind of left London. Well, basically what happened in London is we sort of squat a warehouse, bring in loads of scrap, build loads of sculptures, have a party and make money like that. And then I think when the acid house scene came along, it became harder and harder to squat a warehouse for any length of time where you could actually get a workshop together or build anything. And I think a gentle nudge from the Metropolitan Police and the sort of fact that it wasn't really becoming that practical to squat warehouses in London meant that we left Europe. And it was 1989 when we left Europe, and we had this idea we'd drive to Berlin and build a ramming machine to drive through the wall and bring it down.
That's a bold idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea, but sadly it created a bit too much attention on both sides of the wall, the Western police and the DDR police, and in the end we sort of chickened out and we just turned the ramming machine into a sculpture and just pushed it up to the wall and headed off to Holland. And then the wall came down about 6 weeks later or something.
What gives you that sort of thought process to think, I know, this is going to be a great idea?
Well, we were a collective, so we had a vote actually, and some people voted to carry on and some people voted not to. And I think the non-voters decided in the end that it wasn't going to happen. It didn't happen.
It's probably a wise decision.
Don't know, it would have been, yeah, I think in hindsight it was, because I think even if we had brought down the wall, which would have been great for Mutoid Waste Company and our name, it might be, probably in hindsight, it's better that they brought it down themselves than a couple of crusties from London, you know. So anyway, I don't know.
So we're in your studio. Can we have a look around?
Yeah, of course.
Because there's quite a few sort of things, just around what we've got here. But you've got like these cool.
So this is like my office. This is my brain room, which is actually meant to be my clean room, but it's filthy, as you can see, and really messy. This is where I sort of do small stuff like collage and I build these sort of little figures here. And this here is just I was just trying to get in my head an idea of the sort of scale and stuff of Monster. And these figures here, these sort of 4.5 metre tall mice, and they're kind of going to move, so probably from the waist up, sort of tapping white sticks. Looking at these sort of three blind mice. So they're 4.5 metre tall. These are kind of human size figures, and there's going to be about 6 of them, I think, pushing these prams. And then on the prams there's going to be like little scenarios, like sort of diorama style things with smaller figures like this. And these big mice are pulling this big pile of, well, at the moment it's shoes, but it's actually going to be like shoes, clothes, sort of bits of old furniture. And then out of this is going to rise I'm giving it all away. It will rise a figure who will sing a song. There's going to be a couple of figures behind. And hopefully you're just going to be able to walk around it if I can get, the cables all out the way.
I mean, it's quite ambitious.
It's incredibly
even
ambitious.
When you just look at it there, I recognise these are models, but that looks pretty...
But I mean, yeah, and I haven't got much time. And this is, if you think about, how big this is, these are going to take probably about 2 months to do in themselves, So yeah, I'm pushed, but I think it'll be all right.
Should we look downstairs as well?
Yeah. So this is the think tank room. And these are kind of redundant robots, really. I'm not really sure what to do with them. I've built them for various projects in the past. Strip them down, or things
like random sort of bits of other sort of exhibitions.
I think this is a wanker. I think he's going to be in the show actually, because he hasn't featured anywhere else before.
Right, okay.
And they appear at various sort of festivals and things. So this is going downstairs. And these pieces here are actually they're going to be the legs. So that's a sort
of the giant
because I want them to be
mice.
Of the mice. Yeah, because I want them to be. So that's like the top half of a leg. There's the sort of bottom half. I've only roughly cut them, but I want them to be kind of like those sort of Victorian prosthetic limbs, like really highly polished wood with kind of.
Have you cut these already?
Brass. This is a mate of mine. He cut them out of a tree roughly with a chainsaw. And then I've got them down to this far with a thing called a turbo planer. But they're still, I think they're still too fat, so I'm going to take them down a little bit more. And then I'll hollow them out and put them around a metal frame. And then sand them down, polish them up. So I want them to be really kind of like sort of beautiful wooden things with sort of brass fixings and like those sort of Victorian sort of prosthetic limbs. So that's the start of the mice. And here we have, this is going to be a Christ figure. I'm just sort of working on him now. And he'll be mounted on a big cross on the wall, I think. And he will, not sure what role exactly he's going to play yet, but I think he might have a megaphone in his hand and sort of be this kind of authoritarian, like a guard, shouting at this kind of human train going past. And this little fella, he's going to come out this is really, I'm giving it all away. He's going to come out of the pile of old furniture and old polishes.
It's going to look quite different.
Yeah, no, this is all really early days. None of it's finished. And he'll sing a song. These kind of headbangers are going to beat out a beat. You can actually program them so they can actually be completely in sync and in time with any music that you want to play at the same time. And then there's various things that I've got cupboards opening and closing with. Like this is going to be an arm that comes out of a cupboard with a couple of dead ducks hanging from the fists. I don't know.
I mean, there's quite an imagination.
Yeah, but it's fun, isn't it? It's like the idea is I want people to walk around and just like things be kind of like all these old cases and stuff, like opening and closing with sort of maybe voices coming out or smoke coming out, and it's just all going off like a kind of, I don't know, hopefully you'll be able to spend hours in there wandering around and see different things all the time.
So what was the seed of this idea? Because it's a very ambitious exhibition.
It started with the three blind mice. I just had the one sort of vision I had was like these big figures that I wanted them to be sort of beautiful and out of wood with these, but the noise they made, the tapping of the sticks, wanted to be really dominant. So it's like this kind of like buzzing like an insect. And that was what started it. And then I was thinking the three blind mice, they could be sort of these kind of man-made forces that have gone rogue, blindly kind of ploughing through our society, trashing it, and then it all built up from there. It still keep adding bits to it. Like he was never going to be involved, but I thought, I don't know, I kind of wanted. I just wanted this megaphone sort of sound in the sort of sound piece, and I thought it'd be quite good to come from a cross. Kind of authoritarian Jesus.
So in terms of your sort of inspiration behind your work, then is there a sort of a wider meaning? So you sort of use words like authoritarian and stuff. Is like a political sort of aspect to your work, or is there something?
Yeah, I think. I mean, all my work is political, with maybe with a small p. I think kind of for me that's without it. I don't think that. I think art needs it. Needs it to be political with a small p to be worth something, really. I mean, that's my point of view. I can't make beautiful things, but I can make political things, And
what is that sort of underlying narrative politically then?
It depends on the piece. I think I kind of like with The Last Supper. I was kind of just. I think I have a problem with hypocrisy. I think that's what underlines everything, but I think. With The Last Supper, I was kind of just questioning the idea about whether religion was a good education for a young mind. Simple as that, and looking at that, it's telling us the young mind that it's guilty of some fucking murder that happened, 2,000 years ago, before it's even sort of learnt to talk. Is that a good sort of basis to teach someone all that it's got this kind of all-seeing, all-hearing sort of power that can read their minds? Is that a good way to sort of teach a kid to grow up? Anyway, all these questions, yeah.
So these are all sort of underlying your work. It depends what it is.
Yeah. It's sort of questioning what's taken as sort of as the norm, I guess. I like no one questions religious education, but to me, it's like right on the border of child abuse, especially mental child abuse. And I think, humanity and we all sort of suffer these mental scars from that education throughout our life. You know, my mum, for instance, I remember when she died, she died of a horrible illness, and right up to the day she was dying, she was sort of saying, you know, what have I done to deserve this? You know, and she hadn't done anything, but it's ingrained in our sort of psyche that we're kind of somehow guilty, or you know, if something horrible happens to us, it's because we deserve it. You know, and it's just not true. There's enough.
What about with Monster? What would that?
Monster's a much bigger picture. Well, it's a bigger picture in some ways, but I am going to sort of focus it down. But at the moment, it's sort of looking at sort of man-made forces that have gone rogue. You know, like religion, capitalism, these sort of technology to a certain degree, ones that we've created, and now we've lost control of them, and they're sort of creating this kind of this sort of devastation wherever they go. And not only that, but I think they're undermining sort of foundations of who we think we are as human beings, and taking away those foundations, making us feel kind of like purposeless, like we were once workers, you know, and then we're no longer workers, we're consumers, and now we're no longer consumers, we're becoming something else, and no one really knows what. And it's all about that, and because there'll be language, I mean, because there'll be dialogue, I'm also sort of involving language in that equation as well. So I think the powers that be have manipulated language so much and given it new interpretations so many times in order to for their own gain, that now those words are becoming meaningless as well. And so we haven't even really got a language we can rely on. You know, and if, for instance, I don't know, it's a hot potato, but look at the word anti-Semitism, for instance, right? It used to mean a Jew hater, which kind of like was abhorrent, obviously. And now, because of the way politicians have used it to undermine the Labour Party, for instance, it's taking on a whole different meaning, really. And now is it anti-Israel as well? And therefore, to me, it loses its original potency. And I can equate it with, like when I was a kid, I was a punk, you know, anyone in a suit was a fascist, you know, and actually it completely ignored what actually a real fascist was. And in that way, it undermined the word fascism as well, you know. And I think the same's happening with anti-Semitism. It's like losing its potency because people are misinterpreting it and misusing it. So the language in the piece is going to be all about that as well. It's kind of like sort of how, you know, a fucking bedsit is now called a studio flat. It's just all that sort of thing, you know, and it's kind of, yeah, it's interesting.
And you use a lot of music in your work, so language, but also music
as
well, and the sort of immersive experience and the sounds that people
use. I think, to me, it's like, I think, you know, what I try and do with the sculptures is give it a bit of sort of poetry in its motion, and I think, and make it the movement kind of emotive, and I think adding sort of, you know, sound and light and enhances that, and I think it's meant to be a kind of an after an emotive response, you know.
And is that what you want when somebody comes in to see your work? When they step into the middle of it, they're getting sort of overloaded, really. The senses have been hit from all sides. Yeah,
I do, and you know, I remember like a couple of people who saw The Last Supper came out in tears, and I thought that was kind of like, that's amazing, isn't it? They weren't necessarily tears of sadness; they were just tears because they felt sort of moved to cry,
so
and I think that's good. You know, I want an emotive response. You know.
So and you're raising this the money for this through a crowdfunder.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that before? Is this like
no, and I find it really hard. You know, like I think crowdfunding. I didn't really want to do it, but it was the only way to do it because it's quite expensive building animatronic stuff. Motors cost a lot of money, and you know, and the only way I could do it otherwise would be to charge on the door, and I think art should be free, you know, and what I do is quite accessible art. Kids like it, everyone gets off on it on a different level, and I think if to start charging at the door would be terrible. So fundraising is what I've done, and it's hard because, you know, I've got that sort of British reserve where it's quite hard asking people for cash.
For money at all.
You know what I mean? It's like it's a fine balance, isn't it, between sort of selling it. Everyone goes, you've got to put it out there on the internet all the time, and then you just feel like you're kind of like harassing people, and does that sort of against what you would normally do, having to push it? It does, and also the other thing I really don't like about it is you have to push your show, right? And I think if you push it too much, then people expect too much. You know, like, hey, it's going to be the greatest, biggest, or whatever, and then actually that means that people expect it to be what you say it's going to be, and That's hard as well. Like when I did the Last Supper, it kind of came out of nowhere, and everyone was sort of surprised, like, oh, what? But you know, with this, it's kind of been hyped up already so much that it makes me kind of nervous about showing it.
Giles, thanks very much for talking about that.
Good.